So for the synthesis assignment, this is really going to be a two-part assignment that we have about, looks like 9 days or so to work on. And so that, that will hopefully give you a little bit more time for this. So this next section here, we're moving on in our Canvas course. To this, you have a reading that describes this. This is an optional reading if you want. Getting marked done once you've done these, so you can go to the next section of that, but you can just follow along for this. So the two parts that you need right now for your synthesis assignment is the actual assignment here and then these articles. And so I showed you these articles before. They're just links to them. And these are the first 5 articles that you're going to do in this first part. Okay, so let's bring up the assignment sheet. And the assignment sheet is right in the assignment Dropbox. And I need to move my screen share. All right. We still good there, Justin? All right. Keep me on track there. So, like I said, 2 parts to this assignment. The first part is I want you to create an annotated bibliography of those 5 articles. So an annotated bibliography is even a shorter version of your CAP paper. This is not full sentence writing. It's not, flow. It's basically, the nuts and bolts of the article in a way where we can put it together. These are the 11 things that I want from each article. And you can see here some examples. And you don't have to bullet it the way they did, but seems to work out all right. You want about 1 page per article. Even if you have a little bit of extra, go ahead and go to the next page, because then the idea is if you wanted to print these off or whatever, each article has their own page and you can look at that article as you need to. So what I'm looking for is first the citation. Second is the level of evidence. So go back and look at the level of evidence there. If it is, and I believe all of these are, go ahead and Pedro score them as well. So if they're a randomized controlled trial, go ahead and Pedro score them as well. So your level of evidence, I don't know if they did these here. No, but go ahead and just practice with that. You're just going to list the level of evidence using the Center for Evidence-Based Medicine levels of evidence. You guys remember that? At least remember that I talked about it? Center for Evidence-Based Medicine, CEBM. Kind of remember that? I'll do a little, I'll show you here at the end that as well to go over. For number 3 there, 3 key points. And I put in parentheses there ways to remember the article. So these are going to be your quick, down and dirty kind of things to remember or identify the article. I like the ways to remember the article because as I'm writing, I will remember things in the article that I've read, but I won't remember which article I read it in. That's just me. Right, so one of these always for me is this might be the basketball player article, right? All that is a note to me that this is the one that's talking about basketball. Then you want a few other things in there, you know, that might be some key points, something that you feel like you might be able to use in the future for writing. Are we good on 3 key points? Does that make sense? Then you're going to basically give me the main important parts of the methods, a description of their subjects, right? Basically, this is, you know, going to just be the most abbreviated version of that as possible. You know, so usually age, you know, with the standard deviation is presented there, and then a few other descriptors that might be applicable. The intervention is whatever the experimental condition was on, what did they apply? So in this case, we're going to be looking at external cooling devices. Most of the time here, the intervention is going to be the specific external cooling device that they implemented. So like in the Wingo article that we did previously, the intervention would be the fan set at, you know, about 10 miles per hour of a breeze. Comparison group then is whatever they're comparing it to. There's always got to be some sort of comparison occurring there. And so we need to know whether they're comparing this to a more true control or to another intervention. That's the main thing you're looking for. Is this compared to doing nothing, or is this compared to maybe another cooling device? Because that's obviously going to affect the results drastically. Is it like, there's no way it's recording me. Did the meeting go away? Is anybody still there? Oh, you guys are still there. Oh, the video's not on, that's why. You guys need to see me. I don't know why. Did I see it and I missed it? Thank you. That was crazy. You guys dizzy online there? I would be. Anyway. Now I gotta get back to this. Okay. That was weird. Outcome. So when it says outcome, it really should be more like outcome of interest or something. This is not the results of the study. This is what they are comparing. So outcome in like this evidence-based medicine is more like outcome of interest, the outcome that they're measuring, whatever they're measuring. So it could be, you know, like in the Wingo article, they were measuring blood plasma concentrations of different things. They were measuring VO2 max, right? And all you have to do is list what they're measuring. Because all we want to do is we want to look at the sheet of paper and we want to see what they did in this article. For 8, brief description of the methods, 2 sentences max. When we're talking methods here, I'm thinking more procedures. They're not always procedures, but we've covered most of the other portions of the methods. So we need to know just a little bit about those procedures. Is there anything particularly special in there that we would want to know in analyzing this article? The main results, so these are going to basically be what did they find comparing the intervention and the comparison? Was there in fact differences within these 2 groups? Ten is the application. So this is a combination of the results in these 3 key points. In fact, the 3 key points, one of them might come directly from your application, but the application is how and when could we use this information? To go back to the key points there, just in case, the key points don't all have to be positive, right? They could be negative, like a key point might be a structural problem with the article. So like that's where some of the applications and key points might be different. The application is always going to be positive focusing. There's some place that this article would apply. May not be us, but somewhere. Whereas the key point is going to be more for you. Does that make sense on the difference there between those 2? 3 cross-referenced articles. The last part of, in my opinion at least, any good annotated bibliography is that it leads to more discovery. So the last thing in reviewing a research article is to review their list of references and find any from there that based on the title would seem interesting or applicable to what you're researching. A positive of this is if you're doing, if you're doing comprehensive reviews for more academic type work, like a thesis literature review or something like that, once you have read these articles and you keep reading going on, once you've read all of the good cross-listed articles, that's when you know you've done an exhaustive literature review. That's not fun, but we won't do that today. So that is the first part of this assignment. Any questions on that? Each of the 5 articles will have this done on it. Mm-hmm.
Go over the level of evidence, the whatever.
CEBM? Yep.
So it should be 1 page per, right? Per article?
Per article, at most, at most.
For the cross-reference articles, those will be on like the bottom of the paper.
Yep, so just be like their reference sheet, their references, look at them and just look at the titles and say, hey, any of these seem applicable, interesting, whatever. Yep, and then all you're gonna do is basically copy their reference and put it into yours, just 3 in a row. Saying that if I wanted to go look at more articles, this is where I would go. Maybe it's in here. Maybe it's this one. Move this out of the way, share this. Oh, share screen. This one. All right. Levels of evidence. Right. This is the Center for Evidence-Based Medicine hierarchy. And these are the different levels that we're going to use. 1 represents a higher level of evidence, more control, more internal validity aspects with that. And so you'll just go through and decide, is this a randomized controlled trial? Pretty simple in that. If you're seeing that that the groups were randomly allocated, meaning they were controlled based on some sort of random allocation, you got a randomized controlled trial. In a cohort study, you have a pre-existing group situation. We're comparing 2 groups, but the groups are naturally occurring. Men and women, this class versus that class, people with an ankle sprain versus people without an ankle sprain, cohorts. 3 is case control studies. These are when we're doing analysis, but there's only 1 group. Case series and case studies are now when there's no experiment. We're just following and describing what occurred. And then anecdotal evidence is animal research, bench research, or unpublished clinical observations. You then can compile this into A or B. Don't worry about C. We won't have C stuff for what we're doing most of the time. And so it's whether or not it's a systematic review or it's an individual study. Systematic review has methods that include multiple studies. Individual studies are just that one study. That's the level of evidence. That was in the Introduction to Critical Appraisal PowerPoint and lesson online. So if you, the PowerPoint's there online. If you want more explanation of it, you can go to our YouTube channel and look at the Introduction to Critical Appraisal lesson of me talking into this wonderful mic.
So when we do this method,
You do both. The Pedro, so this goes throughout. Pedro's scale is designed to differentiate between 1Bs. So most evidence that you will be looking at, because that's the standard, are 1B, individual randomized controlled trial. Since so much evidence is 1B evidence, we then have a way to differentiate between 1B studies. That's when it's most applicable. It can be used for cohort studies as well, but those are going to receive lower scores just because of the nature of the research. Okay. Other questions on the first part of the critical appraisal, or not the synthesis of research assignment? Good on that? So I'm going to break my own rule a little bit. And I'm going to introduce the second part of the paper, even though you haven't done the first part. So I will introduce this to give you some guidance on where we are going. I will kick you loose then for Friday and the weekend to hopefully make a decent amount of progress on that first part. And then on Monday, I will fully expect to have to reteach everything I'm going to teach you. Okay? Because I'm a realist for the second part. But I do want you guys to pay attention to this now, because we do have citation management we're talking about on Monday as well. And if you guys do a better job of learning it now, on Monday, I can answer much more specific questions on wordsmithing things and different aspects like that, opposed to just reteaching the assignment. So here's hoping. Okay? The second part of the assignment is a paper. But this, I promise, will be unlike any paper you've ever written. The hardest part about this paper will be hitting the word requirement, and it's going to be getting it down to the word requirement. You have 750 to 1,250 words. That's it. In those 750 to 1,250 words, I want you to answer the question, do external cooling devices improve performance in physically active individuals compared to passive cooling? You must use all 15 sources. The 5 sources from your annotated bibliography and these 10 sources as well. They need to be in-text cited. So when I say use them, I need to know where in the paper they were used and referenced. And then you will also create, your reference page at the end. So for this, I would like you, for both parts of this, to create 2 documents, and you will upload both. One of the annotated bibliography and a second document of the paper. 2 documents, the annotated bibliography in one document, save it, upload it. Paper, second document, save it, upload it. Yes, they will have the same due date a week from Friday. 1 paper. 750 to 1,250 words. All right, and that doesn't include the reference page, right? I mean, obviously, because that would probably be enough on its own. So that's the assignment. Let me now share how you really go about doing this. And so what I did in order to just be, let's go lazy, I guess, is just an appropriate term as any. I grabbed this systematic review. A systematic review does similar to what I'm asking you to do, but it does it at a not higher level, but a more in-depth level. We're working on the synthesis assignment of just that. Synthesizing, bringing multiple pieces of research together and intertwining them into a more abbreviated version of themselves. Systematic review has to expand and explain a bunch of different things. Okay? But what I want to show you here is, this isn't very easy to see, but there are 30 articles, or 20 or 30, somewhere in there, similar to what we have. And this is the description of all the information, right, that was in those articles. And this question was, is blood flow restriction, or BFR, effective at improving improving outcomes in musculoskeletal rehabilitation? That's the question. And it goes on and reads and describes this. It found however many studies it found. And you can read the systematic review article, which would condense it even more. But I wanted to show that we can do this for this assignment. So what I did is I just went and took statements from that article and created a mini paper, or a paper that's similar to what we would be doing. Obviously, this would be considered plagiarism, but the only reason I did this was to show you the format of writing. The only way to get it down to that many words, and you can see I'm at 751 words, but I don't have any bridges or anything in there. I just cut and paste statements. The only way to do that is in a very specific writing style. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger to see. How's that? Is that all right? You guys good online? All right. So I want you to pay attention to a few things. First is the lack of wasted words. Notice there aren't references to authors' names like they teach you in like APA style, right, where you put names, and these long citations that make it difficult to read. Right? We're writing for an audience that doesn't like to read. We don't like to read, so we're going to avoid that. There are also no statements that indicate that the author is like the one writing this. The statements are very much just based off of what they found and are created or are written as statements of fact, decisive statements. You don't need the, I feel or I found or any of that sort of stuff. You're writing it. As long as you can justify it, state it confidently. So this is what I would create as far as my main statement in this. I have to answer this question: is blood flow restriction effective in clinical musculoskeletal rehabilitation? So I'm going to open up my paper with a bang, basically making statements about that. So here we go. Although there was insufficient data to examine an effect size for muscle size in the meta-analysis, individual studies have demonstrated greater muscle volume and CSA, it says somewhere in there what that is, right? If you're using abbreviations with that, abbreviations are fine. It's a great way to add words. The first time you would use it, you would say it full and then put it in parentheses. I cheated. In both lower and upper limbs, alongside strength increases following, this is low-level blood flow restriction training. This reflects findings in the literature involving healthy and athletic cohorts where LLBFR training has been shown to elicit greater increases in muscle size compared with low-load training alone, blah, 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 and it keeps going. Okay. Notice from this, each time you see one of those little numbers, that is a research article that they pulled from. So if you look at these, most of these now are going to be statements from like the key points or application or findings from their annotated bibliography, right? Individuals demonstrated greater muscle volume, right? Boom, there's that study. CSA in both lower 3 studies and upper limbs. In order to make this one sentence, I have what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 articles in this one sentence, and I combine them to make this one sentence that states what I want to say. So that's the key. The key is to find that these 3 articles are relatively simple and can be shown or can be put alongside these other articles to show that there is an increased effectiveness of blood flow restriction in this situation. So that's why you print these articles off one page at a time. And so you can organize them at that point and say, these are articles about this. And these are articles about this. These are articles that found this. These are articles that found this. Now, obviously, these are not the exact same articles, right? They didn't do the exact same sort of thing. The only thing that were similar with these articles is that they found positive results in the same outcomes. More than likely, everything else about this research, these 3 research studies are different. Different subjects, different this, different that. We need to address that in our paper because we want to know that, right? We want to know, yes, is it effective? But the answer is always going to be, it depends, right? That's always the answer to every question. It depends. So other sorts of statements that can go in there. Now, here's one describing subjects. Studies involved individuals with knee osteoarthritis, ligament injuries, sporadic inclusion body myositis, and older adults susceptible to sarcopenia, right? In this case, they talked about, they really wanted to emphasize this. This is a systematic review and a meta-analysis. So because of that, they included the actual number in case you can't count the sources. But you can see how instead of talking about article, like I'm assuming some in there, opposed to talking about reference 51, let's hope reference 51 was at the top too. No, 61? Yeah, 61. So opposed to talking about Article 61 and describing its subjects and its outcomes and all that in one paragraph, which is what we do, right? I mean, most of the time, if you're writing a paper, there's one, maybe two sources per paragraph, right? Because you're describing what that source had to say. That expands because if you have 15 sources and you have, 1 to 2 sources, that's, about 10 paragraphs, you're not going to be able to get that done. Does that make sense? So you describe it this way. Here you go. Here's a statement that doesn't have sources because it describes everything, right? This is a statement from the author because they can read. They can make it definitive and say, this is what it is. You can make your own definitive statements. Not everything has to be sourced. More things here. BFR was used in combination with load resist. So here's now describing some of the procedures, a statement about the procedures. Another statement about procedures, right? Some studies did repeated sessions on the same day when BFR was used in isolation and in combination with simple muscle exercises. Here's one describing what they did with outcomes. Muscle strength was assessed by measurement of maximal isotonic strength with a large majority of studies using the 1 rep max test. Blah, 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 right? So the point is, you have read these 50, or you've read the 5 studies and made an annotated bibliography. You've read the annotated bibliography, which gives you enough of the information for those other 10 studies. Go and create in your mind an outcome. You've now read these. You've looked at this. Answer the question in your own mind, right? Does it work? Yes or no? All right? If yes, here, if no, if it depends, then you can do combination statements where it might be, do I have a combination statement? Here's one similar. Research in healthy individuals has identified thigh circumference as an important predictor of occlusion pressure, with larger limbs requiring a higher pressure to reach the same level of occlusion as smaller limbs. Therefore, set pressures across a whole clinical cohort may not restrict blood flow to the same extent in all the individuals. This may result in adverse cardiovascular outcomes, particularly if selected pressures result in complete arterial occlusion. So the idea in this statement here is we're describing both positive and negative outcomes. Right? We can flat make a statement that says 14 articles found positive results and 1 article found negative results, and then just cite 14 and cite 1. So you can manipulate your writing however it makes sense to you. You're going to need transitions. You're going to need, some logical flow to all of this. The point being, though, write it in a way that makes sense and insert the citations as you go, opposed to read the articles, describe the article in your writing. It's almost backwards to the back to when you first started doing research writing. And if you're anything like me, you know, when you're like in middle school, even in high school, right? You would write your paper and then go, oh crap, I need sources. And so then you would go and find a source that states what you had already stated and throw a quote in there, right? You throw the quote in there. I mean, hey, I did my doctorate in Dalton higher ed. You know, APA style lets you actually quote this some gun, right? I mean, you just literally like plagiarize. I mean, APA is like give authors credit and then you can plagiarize them, right? That's the style. Not my style, but it sure helps when you're trying to get more breadth. You ever read those papers? They're no fun. So you're trying to shrink this down. So as long as you start with some sort of opening bang and then end with something like a conclusion and recommendation statement, here is their strength training is important for many clinical populations during musculoskeletal rehabilitation. The clinical relevance is that LLBFR training can provide a more effective approach to low load and more tolerable approach to heavy load rehabilitation. Individualized BFR training prescription may provide a comparable surrogate for heavy load training while minimizing pain during training. BFAR may facilitate early engagement in low load training with limited stress, right? You notice here on this one, when they're going through, they're making these statements, and these are statements that they have provided evidence for before. So the only time they specifically do cite there is when they're making a very specific statement opposed to a more general statement. So as long as you start with, you know, your basic answer and kind of come back and end with your basic answer, in between is where you describe the important things in justifying your answer. If you want somebody to believe your paper, you need to explain to them why they should believe it. All of the, well, yeah, but what this? Well, did they do this? You know, all the questions you would naturally have about the studies should be answered in there. Does that make sense? So as I stated before with this, you know, I completely expect to do an abbreviated version of this on Monday. We do not have class on Friday for the purpose of reading and writing. I'll need to bring you in and watch you read and write. This is now when we are really getting started in this idea of staying with the pack. This assignment is due a week from Friday. Everything in this course is specifically designed to give you the amount of time you need to do that activity. That means you can't wait. It takes a while. You know, I think going through, most people have said it's about an hour to an hour and a half to do per article to do the anti-bibliography. Or you have to read it, you have to figure out what it is, you have to write it back down. Right? So in order to, you know, opposed to just wasting your time by bringing you in and having you listen to me on Friday, I'm just going to give you back that time. But if you wait till Monday when we meet again to look at this assignment, your week next week will be really bad. If you wait till Thursday to do this assignment, you're screwed. Or you have nothing else to do all day Thursday and your day Thursday will suck. Right? This document, yeah, I guess I can, if you think it'd be helpful. I mean, legitimately, all I did was when I showed up to work today, I go, oh, instead of me trying to make up examples on the spot, I'll be lazy and steal somebody else's. You could go to any systematic review, any article, and it will have similar examples. So feel free to use those sorts of things as well. If you think this will be helpful, I will upload this to the synthesis assignment module in Canvas. And then this lesson, of course, it gets uploaded to the YouTube playlist. You should have that link, so that way every time I add a new lesson, you can view that on YouTube if you would like. Are there other questions or things I can do for you? Do be assertive if you have questions, like over this time. Email me if that's what you're most comfortable, on my email signature when you get emails from me, has my cell phone number. Text me. At the bottom there is that you can book me. Feel free to grab a slot on there. All you have to do is click on that link. It'll show you availability, and then say, hey, do you want to come to one of my offices, or do you want to meet on Zoom? Zoom is probably best considering the rules, but if that really doesn't work for you, I'm not opposed to in-person meetings. But use that, like, this is for you to do the assignment on your own when it's best for you, not for you to do it on your own without help. You set the time, but it's not on your own. All right? Great. See you online, buddies.